politicians don't understand the problem, or they have very alternative agendas. And these big corporations, for their own agendas, control regulation. Is that what's going to happen?
US politics is run by the lobbyists generally. So if you have money, you can hire the lobbyist, you can influence policy can help you. So very simple. And then the fines are not big enough. If I make a billion by violating a rule and I get fined 100 million, I will take it every day of the week and twice on Sunday.
So you're saying enforcement
is very, very important.
It's very weak.
Enforcement is very weak, yes, absolutely, right? But it's a function of not having, what you said, not having proper regulation.
What's next for the industry?
Lots of turmoil.
What's next for Jehanzeb?
Global domination and compliance.
This is the final question, the hardest one. What's next for humanity?
I'm an eternal optimist. We will figure it out and always see the best in the person, even though you may be experiencing the worst with them.
Welcome to The Next, everyone, the podcast that looks at next-gen disruption across finance, across business, across technology. Today, we have a very special guest, a person I've known for a long time, who is a titan of compliance and all things regulation here in the UAE. Jehanzeb Awan, welcome.
Thank you, Ahmed. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Great. So can you tell us a little bit more about, just an introduction about who you are?
Sure. Number one, I think you mentioned Titan. That's very interesting. Nobody has called me that. Hopefully that means something good. So I've been here since 2003, which is quite a long time. So I've seen a number of cycles. I came here, started working with Emirates NBD. This is prior to the merger. I was National Bank of Dubai. And then I left and then joined Morgan Stanley in 2006, I believe. And then I worked at Morgan Stanley for about 8 years, then left and set up Awan Partners, which is a governance, risk, and compliance consulting firm. And in 2019, I set up a technology company called Azuka. So we have been sort of going through the journey with the UAE particularly. I would say, my path and our company's path is pretty much aligned with what's happening in the region with the UAE and Saudi, and now we are international. So it's been very interesting. A lot of things that I thought were true, I realized are not true, and things that I thought were not true came out to be true. So it'll be an interesting discussion to share with you what we have gone through and how certain elements of growth can change your perspective and ideas that potentially will help the listeners.
So you're the founder of Awan.
Yes.
Named after you, of course.
Of course. That tells you how smart I am, because I couldn't come up with a different name. So
what does Awan do? Because a lot of people who are listening in might not know.
Okay. Yeah. So it's simple. Something called a GRC, which is a governance, risk, and compliance consulting firm. We also added an F to it, which is regulatory finance. So we are the ones who provide support when financial services firms or sovereigns or companies looking to list with their regulatory requirements, with their licensing. So, for example, if somebody wants to get a central bank license here in the UAE, or ESCA license, or a DFSA or ADGM license, or a license in Saudi with the CMA or SAMA, they will come to us and ask us how we can help them. So that's one of the things we do. Then we also support ongoing regulatory matters. So either as outsourced compliance officers or outsourced finance officers or outsourced risk officers, which kind of gives us a very interesting perspective, right? So you're a pure consultant when it comes to helping somebody from the outside. But then when you are executing on an outsourced basis, you're actually involved in the execution, right? So we're not pure consultants like a strategy consultant who comes in, looks at what's happening, gives you a plan, and then walks off. We're the guys who help you come up with a plan and then execute the plan. And then we're also the ones who help you post-execution. So for example, some of the institutions, they have some challenges, whatever the challenges may be. They may be regulatory challenges, operation challenges. They also come to us saying, okay, we have these problems. How do you help solve those problems? Or we have done a very interesting large mandate for a large global firm where the questions were asked about, what is everybody else doing, where do we fit, what should we be doing, and so on and so forth, right? So this is from a regulatory point of view, which will align their strategy once that is done to how they need to fit themselves with their commercial objectives within the regulatory framework, right? So the big challenges typically are, when rules are written for baseline.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah. So, for example, you go on Sheikh Zayed Road, they say speed limit 120, right? Now, if you go over 139, doesn't matter whether you're white, black, blue, green, yellow, it will flash you.
Right.
Right? So you cannot say, oh, there was nobody on the road, it was Saturday morning, it was 5 a.m., there was no car. I mean, how can you flash me because I was not being a danger to anybody, right? But that's not how it works. So the rules are written for a baseline to protect whomever they're intending to protect. What that creates generally is a number of challenges for people who, in this case, somebody who's driving alone on a Saturday morning and can go fast. So this is where we come in and tell them how they can, not that they can violate the rules, but how to have a proper strategy which fits commercially for them and also satisfy the regulation. That's where the difference between a good advisor and a bad advisor is.
And it means, so a couple of things afterwards. We can go on to Azakal later, because I'm sure it's a very interesting venture you've set up there. But let's talk about regulation and compliance to regulation. Yeah. Right.
I think your audience dropped from 10,000 to 1. After that, that topic. So, happy to talk.
So, regulation exists in a number of obviously different. We can talk about regulation in security. We can talk about regulation in virtual assets. Mm-hmm. We can talk about regulation in finance. And regulation is there to protect all stakeholders. However, a lot of people feel, I'm talking about the industry and generally, regulation.
You're talking about the virtual asset industry or generally the financial services industry?
Financial services. Okay. Regulation can be too onerous. Does it really protect or does it hinder business?
This is going to get very controversial. Okay. Yeah. If there's only one person listening, I'm okay. I'm happy to share my thoughts. If there are 10,000, it's going to be a problem. So I would say, look, it's a difficult one, right? And it's very easy for the industry to say that the regulators are not doing what they should be doing because they're not sitting in the regulator's seat because you don't have full context. And the regulators also, they may have a little bit better view, but they're not sitting in the industry seat and they don't have context. So where things need to happen a bit more, and it's very hard to achieve.
How does regulation protect people? But also, is regulation a hindrance to business? And regulation is, around in finance, in virtual assets, in security, cybersecurity, in physical security, right? And generally, regulation is meant to be there to protect all stakeholders. Yeah. Right. But when does regulation, do you find that particularly maybe, let's go into virtual assets. Let's go into, let's start with virtual assets because it's a topic that we're both familiar with. Do you feel that it's still, regulation has moved on significantly in virtual assets over the last, 6-7 years maybe? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we can all see that Dubai is the undisputed leader, and the UAE generally is the undisputed leader in regulation of virtual assets. But do you still feel that given the nascent aspect of this industry, do you feel that regulation almost hinders business or does it protect?
I think before I answer this question, right, it's very important because this is the first principles question. This is the first principles question that is that needs to be understood, particularly from a context point of view. Okay, so the main idea is, look, the regulations don't exist in a vacuum, right? That's the most important point people have to understand. Everything in the world is driven by, and this is again very controversial, but I'm going to say it. Hopefully, I don't get in trouble. Is driven by politics. Okay, politics drives policy. Policy typically will drive regulation and law. That's why you have in democratic countries changes in law and the process for changing the rules and regulations, et cetera, et cetera. Same thing with obviously non-democratic countries, et cetera. But the main challenge is that there are political agendas. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to look. You can't look at this from a point of view of just simply regulation, right? It's at least two layers detached from politics, policy, and law, and then regulation. So the challenge there is that, for example, now if you look at the U.S., you mentioned that UAE is at the forefront, which it 100% is right now in relation to virtual assets regulation. But the U.S. is now becoming a lot more open to virtual assets businesses.
Yeah.
And I always think, and I used to live in New York and work in New York, so I've have some experience of the U.S. setup and the mindset. U.S. is very transaction-driven economy. It's not a relationship-driven economy. Okay.
What does that mean?
Okay. So you know why every company or the tech companies or other companies scale fast in the U.S. faster than any other place?
Because there's loads of money.
Money is one element, right? There's lots of money in other places as well. But the reason why it scales is because the culture is that if I can do a better job than you can, the customer will switch. The relationship hurdle is very low. Maybe it's 10, 20%. The value creation decision-making process is very... So if I can get, let's say, 20 points of value for $10 from my existing supplier, the next supplier gives me 30 points of value for my same money. Doesn't matter if I've been with the existing supplier for 5 years, I will switch. That's the US mentality. That's why you see companies go up from a social point of view, and that's why you see companies go down the moment the value goes down. As you move to Europe, the relationship value increases, transaction value decreases.
Right.
Okay. As you move to Asia, Middle East, relationship value significantly increases, transaction value decreases. That's why the cycle of growth is slower generally here as compared to the US. This is my humble opinion.
Okay.
It's one of the things, this is not the only thing, but one of the things. It's also market size. I
would argue differently. Though. I would argue that here in the UAE specifically, it's probably more transaction driven. The market in every industry is very price sensitive. I would say that the UAE is probably the ultimate capitalist society, meaning you can do a job better and cheaper, you'll get the business.
Yeah.
And because I think the culture of the UAE is all about fine margins.
Okay. So
right?
I would challenge that. I would say this may be partially true for Dubai, but not for the UAE. This may be partially true for some industries, definitely not for all industries. And at least my experience has been that people still continue to do business with companies who are not delivering as much value as the competitors can, simply because there's history and there's a relationship.
Right.
So, and that affects the younger generation is less, I guess, fixated on that. The relationship
are you talking about, when you say general terms, are you talking about finance?
I'm talking about finance as well. I mean,
are you talking about your business as well?
I'm talking about my business as well. So I'm talking about tech business. I'm talking about the consulting business, FMCG business as well. So we've seen, because we have seen so many businesses, just to give you an idea, right? In the last 11 years, we've done 1,000+ license applications across our footprint, right? So it's a lot of new businesses that we have helped set up. And the data points that we have in terms of...
And what kind of 1,000, when you say 1,000 business, are they in what industries mainly?
across financial services, non-FS, related industries, mostly lots of virtual asset businesses, lots of banking businesses, asset management businesses,
Right.
trading businesses, tech businesses,
Yeah.
family offices, foundations.
So it's mainly financial services that you focus on, right?
Mainly financial services. I would say
and then
90%, 80 to 90% of our business
is
financial
financial
services.
services within the UAE.
Or
and-
something related to financial services. So there must be a listing angle, there must be a regulatory angle.
Right.
Sovereign, we deal with sovereigns as well. So supporting them in some of their different objectives.
So obviously being close to, being here in the UAE, you're very close to all the regulators doing what you do.
Mm-hmm.
The UAE has a unique problem in that it's a population of what? What's the population? What's
10 and a half, 11
10 and a
million.
half,
Yeah.
11 million people, which is not small.
Which is city
Which
of
is
Riyadh.
not big.
Almost.
I mean, it's what? 1.5 Londons, probably a bit more. Like 1 1/3.
Actually, it's less than Lahore, if you ask me. I'm Pakistani. So
You're
it's
Pakistani.
It's less than Lahore and about less than half of Karachi.
Right. And here in the UAE, or Dubai is on its own. You have ESCA as a regulator,
Yeah.
which regulates financial like how many financial services regulators do you have here? You got all the freezers.
I lost count.
DIFC. Exactly.
Please ask the question.
Yeah. So there being so many regulators in the UAE, is it overkill?
See, again, I go back to my comment about politics and context, right? So if you look at it in a vacuum, and we get this question all the time saying, oh, how come, a country of 11 million people with 7 regulators doesn't, how does that work and all this stuff? So it basically is looking at a 20-year-old and not understanding how they went from, being a 1-year-old to a 20-year-old, right? Yeah. If you want to understand how a 20-year-old behaves, you have to kind of put this into the context of how they grew up, who were their parents, what was the environment, what education, all this stuff, right? So I always encourage people to always, whenever a question like this is asked, you always have to look for context.
Yeah.
And then the ability to sort of decipher, because even you and I come from the same industry, but if I say green, your green may be very different from my green, although it's the color green, right?
Yeah.
We can be poles apart. So context is very, very important. So in this case, if you look at it, there was the central bank. That was the first regulator set up in the UAE. Then once the basically policymakers realized that they need capital markets and the industry sort of demanded that, then ESCA was created.
Yeah.
Right.
And ESCA regulates?
ESCA regulates mainland. It's a capital markets regulator for non-financial free zones entities. So exclude DIFC and exclude ADGM, which are financial free zones.
Yeah.
And everything else is ESCA, except in Dubai, virtual assets are regulated by VARA. Okay. So think of it, UAE is a federation, right? So think of it as the US. You have state regulators and you have federal regulators.
Right.
So UAE Central Bank.
So central bank is a federal regulator.
ESCA is a federal regulator.
ESCA is a federal regulator.
VARA is a state regulator, which is the state of Dubai.
Yeah.
Because if you go to Hatta, which is part of Dubai, you're still you're under VARA's regulation. And then you have the DIFC, and then you have the ADGM. Now, the obvious thing people have to understand is that the legal setup in mainland UAE is different from the legal setup in the financial free zones. So financial free zones, ADGM, DIFC, common law jurisdictions, right?
Yeah.
UAE, mainland UAE is not a common law jurisdiction.
Yeah.
Most of the European world and most of the Western world operates under common law setup.
Yeah.
So and legal certainty in financial transactions is very, very important, right? If I don't know that our transaction will have a certain legal outcome, if I cannot have my representation and warranties in an agreement that I have with you, that if you don't behave, what is my recourse and what is the likely outcome? For large transactions, that becomes a significant problem, right? Because you are taking a lot of legal risk and your entire investment can get wiped out because the legal system does not support it. So the reason why DIFC was set up in the beginning is to attract Western financial institutions to the region, to make this a financial hub and provide them the legal framework that they are familiar with. And that's why basically everybody came, right?
Are there too many regulators? Is it working? Is the strategy of having so many regulators working at the moment, or is there room for growth? Or do you feel that you do need such a complex framework?
Very controversial question. I have a very controversial answer, which will get me into a lot of trouble. So I'm going to filter that a little bit. So look, I think if you look at the IFC and ADGM numbers, just the financial free zones, stellar growth in the last 2 years, right? UAE did a tremendous job in handling COVID. Everybody was looking at the UAE. And post-COVID, Europeans, Asia, folks from Asia Pac, from Hong Kong particularly, some from Singapore, the number of family offices that have moved to the IFC, the financial institutions that have come here, there's a lot of inflow. And now what's happening in the UK with non-dom,
they're moving here.
Everybody's moving here.
Everyone's moving here.
Everybody's moving here. So
it's a smart tactic. I think it's because it's attracting lots of businesses that not only need to do business here, but this is a hub for business.
Correct.
And the tax advantage is
correct.
A
so
big
personal
thing.
income tax, yes. Now there's corporate tax, which is 9%. So which complicates things a little bit. But then again, I always give an example of, again, this will get me into trouble, but I used to live in New York, used to take the subway, and people live in London, take the tube. And you and I both know how many times those subways or tubes are on strike, not working, problems. And this is something that has, and this is a setup that has existed for a very long time, right? So this should be more efficient it is efficient, but can be less problematic. I remember when the
and not very nice.
And not very nice. I remember when Metro was open, right?
Yeah.
The amount of uproar that happened because the Metro's door sometimes didn't open for 5 minutes, or it was a little late.
Dubai problems, first world problems.
First world problems. But I'm saying Dubai sometimes, or the UAE sometimes, is a victim of its own success because the expectations are set so high which is fantastic. I'm a big believer in there's no value in setting low expectations, right? Might as well not set anything. So that's what they do. But when you set expectations, people obviously will kind of judge you against that, right? So, and I had a few interesting conversations with my colleagues who were from the UK or the US, saying, look, every day there's a strike in the UK, or there's a problem in the US or New York for trains, and everybody's complaining that the Metro, 5 minutes late or so on. So it doesn't make sense, but it's a function of expectation. So coming back to the point that you were saying, are there too many regulators? If you look at it in isolation without context, yes. Okay. If you understand how the UAE is set up, and I've kind of gave a hint about it being a federation, and if you understand culturally how the Arab world is set up, it will all make sense.
Yes.
Right. And then I also think, and I think there's a strategy. I do not know this for sure, but this is what I read and what I will understand, is that when you create competition, internal competition, especially within government agencies, it keeps them sharp.
Yeah.
Right.
But this goes back to your problem. This is where I disagree with your initial point about the UAE being, or the Middle East in general, not just the UAE, being very relationship driven, not transactional driven.
Yeah.
And this is an example that contradicts your point, which says that the UAE, especially, this point about government agencies almost competing with each other to do a better job, shows that if, there are two virtual asset regulators here in the UAE at the moment, ADGM, which was actually FSRA, and VARA, which is Dubai. And also, arguably, also the central bank. Right? Those are the three regulators. Now, each one of them, there's a big overlap in terms of what all of them do. Yet, they compete with each other
Yeah.
in a way that is, I think, almost attracting businesses here. So this is why you get.
I would challenge you there.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because it's the reason why they exist is more structural than by design. It's basically, when you are, let's say, if you're building a house, right? There's a house there, and you're demolishing or you're upgrading the house. There are certain walls you can't break.
Yeah.
Right. You have to adjust based on the foundation and everything else of the house. So there is a limitation of what you can do to the renovation of the house versus having a plot of land and building however you want, right?
Be specific.
Yeah. So the structural difference is what I've mentioned is central bank, mainland UAE,
Yeah.
financial free zones, which are very specific to Dubai and Abu Dhabi, set up for different reasons, right? Because for attracting investors, so and financial services institutions. So the main difference here is because of how the UAE is set up, because of the federation. If Abu Dhabi wants to do something, it cannot force Dubai to follow unless and until it's a federal setup.
Yeah.
If Abu Dhabi wants to do something, Abu Dhabi has to do it themselves. That's how it is set up. Dubai wants to do something, Dubai can do it. That's why, if you think about it, VARA came out very quickly, although FSRA was there,
Yeah.
right? So the easier thing would have been,
And the DFSA.
and the DFSA. I think, yeah, there are other matters. I mean, I'm close to this, so I can't really sort of go too much into it. But logically, you would say, okay, we already have a financial services regulator that is familiar with virtual assets, which is the FSRA. Why don't we extend its purview when it comes to financial virtual assets to the rest of the UAE?
I'd actually argue differently. I would also say an extra point that if you look at the FCA in the UK, it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah,
right.
Has been for a long time.
It's too big, it's too clunky. It's about 10 years, well, not 10 years, maybe 6-7 years behind the regulators here, because what they're trying to do is retrofit virtual asset regulation.
I go back to my point about politics driving policy.
Right.
And policy driving regulation. So I think it's not so simple. There is politics in the UK that is driving the agenda on how the FCA is looking at virtual assets, particularly. There's no other reason for it.
But the thing is, the point is, in the UK, there's only one financial services regulator, which is the FCA.
Yeah.
The UK population of about 65, 70 million, something like that.
Yeah.
The UAE population of 10 million has so many regulators.
Yeah.
And actually, it works because VARA is specific to virtual assets. And it opens up a lot more. It's more nimble.
Yeah. But you know what it tells you, which we tell all our new clients, that ideas are a dime a dozen. It's all about the execution.
Yeah.
Right. If you ask me, the reason why the UAE is successful is the government is not afraid of making mistakes, again, and then learning from their mistakes and changing strategy, executing, learning from the mistakes, changing strategy, fail fast. They're running effectively, and I'm sure you've heard this before, the country is being run like a business, which is fantastic because it brings efficiency to the system within the context of politics.
Yeah.
Right? Certain things change, a lot of things, certain political realities, if they shift, the policy will shift because otherwise it will create lots of challenges, right? So unfortunately, with what's happening in Europe, and we can, again, this is a very controversial thing, and in my view, there is a certain ease and lack of impetus for innovation, growth, excitement.
Mega's a disaster.
Yeah, I think it's basic. When you have so many different countries with different priorities. It's like, again, my examples are very poor, so please bear with me. It's like having 9 kids. Well, think about it. In this case, I don't know how many countries are in EU, like 26 kids, right?
Yeah.
And you have 26 kids. All of them are different ages. Maturity cycle is different, economically, mentally, right? And you are trying to basically, and I don't understand the Europe EU Parliament, Parliament system, how it works in detail to be too critical. But you have bureaucrats who have, or technocrats who have limited understanding of what a country is going through, and that country has to fit the macro EU agenda, right? Which, when you are very poor, and as was the case with Spain or Portugal or some of the other sort of countries, right? Because of EU, they developed very, very fast. But now, again, political realities, who is writing the most checks, who has the most influence, is driving a lot of policy, right? Number of things that are currently happening is, and same applies to the US as well, in the UK also. If your own medical system is broken, I don't understand how a government can send billions of dollars for outside the country for whatever purpose, but not have the medical. I'm not talking about
I can go on about this all
building
day.
hotels. I'm not talking about the nice to haves. I'm talking about the must haves, right? So if a child dies or if somebody dies because they could not get medical care on time, when it's supposed to be free and available, and the government has not done that, then there's a serious
because there's
problem
a lot
there.
of waste. The NHS is a mess. You could say the same about, so going back to regulation, FCA is a mess. It's
You're gonna get me into trouble with the FCA.
I'm saying it.
We do have a London office, so
I'm sure you do. Yeah. But the whole point is that it's too clunky. It's not going fast enough. And it's one of the reasons that regulators have not been able to keep up with the pace of business growth. It comes back to the initial point about what a regulator does. A regulator is there to protect all stakeholders, to protect investors, to protect consumers, to protect the business. Right? And when a regulator cannot keep up with the pace of innovation,
I would suggest basically all regulators in the Western world to read a book called Scaling Up. Okay. If you just read that book, it's quite simple. And if you apply what the book is saying, it will really streamline the decision-making process. It's all data-driven. I think now we have enough data. But again, putting everything within the context of politics. But you should be able to have what it appears to me in a very unformed view is that there are no data-driven decisions in most Western governments. They are making data-driven decisions potentially on the economic side, the financial side.
Well, a broken political system, really.
So
I mean, you can talk about look, I have,
and it's all reactive, by the way.
It's all reactive, exactly. You go into I've been involved also and close to the policy making pieces in the UK government. Albeit at a limited level, not a huge level. But I see how, politicians don't understand the problem. Or they have very alternative agendas in the UK.
Of course.
Such that, and I think the FCA is so big, Labour and the Conservative Party, I mean, we won't get into politics, but innovation is
structural issue, right?
Structural issues.
If your job is being a politician, by definition, in my view, you're compromised.
Yes.
So,
because it's about will, it's about agendas, it's about all these other things.
If you make money from being in office, as in you get a salary, and that's all you know how to do, what would you do to keep your job?
Nothing.
Need I say more? So I think, again, structural issues, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, I'm not saying that it needs to be looked at, right? I think what will happen, the reason why the UAE and some of the GCC countries are doing so well is because there is an execution mindset,
Yeah.
right? Everything has faults. You can give me anything that is amazingly well done, and I can help you find faults in it. And if you can give me something that is very poorly done, and I can help you find something really awesome in it.
Yeah.
Right? So everything has both. Nothing exists. The
Correct.
right can't exist without the left.
Yeah.
It's that's just the way the universe is set up, right? At least our reality. So that's the important part. So it's what works for you, and having the courage to actually make that happen. Unfortunately, I mean, it's fundamental problems now. If you look at what's happening currently in Pakistan with all the floods, this happens every year, right?
Yeah.
Not sort of addressing the issue, and it's not that this is a once in a lifetime thing. This happens almost every year.
Yeah.
And people are, so something needs to be done to fix the issue. If you don't fix the issue and your strategy is hope,
Yeah. Exactly.
then you have a problem.
So going into the whole innovation in regulation.
Yeah.
One thing that's been talked about here in the UAE a lot is AI. AI regulation.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist, certainly not in the Western world,
Yeah.
to any meaningful degree.
Yeah.
Being sat where you are, you have an ear to the ground. What's going on what are the latest updates? Where is the future going with AI regulation?
Look, it's very hard. Anybody will tell you nobody has a clue. Only maybe somebody who is very, very close within the top 5 AI companies can give you some predictable answers about where AI is going, and the way it's growing is very fast. I mean, if you just look at ChatGPT Model 1 versus ChatGPT Model 5, humongous difference, right? And then others are doing different things. We have Azuka, which is a RegTech platform. We're deploying AI, actual AI, because everybody says they have AI, but when you peel the layers, there's not much there. I refer you to builder.ai as an example. If you have people coding in the back, it's not AI. The main idea is, look, AI regulation is super important because you have to have controls around certain decisions that the machine should not make, especially when it becomes ethical or moral decisions, right?
Yeah.
It has to be, we're not quite there yet, and the models are not quite sophisticated. And I don't think, and maybe just because of my age or how I was raised, maybe my kids will have a different...
You're 25.
Yeah, exactly. I think I will... This recording will be available for my wife as well, right? So, the main sort of challenges is that those ethical and moral considerations have to be built into rules and regulations. What corporations generally do, and this is what we're seeing if you look at lots of issues that Facebook has had and other companies that have had, is that in the interest of corporate profit, the rules are not being followed. And if the rules don't exist, it's kind of free for all, right?
Yeah.
And AI can be very, very dangerous. It's like a gun.
But what is it if when these big corporations, for their own agendas, control regulation? What then? I mean, is that what's happening? Is that what's going to happen?
So again, controversial view, right? So U.S. politics is run by the lobbyists generally. So if you have money, you can hire the lobbyist. You can hire the lobbyist. You can influence policy. Policy can help you. So very simple setup, and that's what's happening. And then the fines are not big enough. If I make a billion by violating a rule and I get fined 100 million, that's a 900 million uptick for me, right? I will take it every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So stuff like that is happening. But again, the main concern for...
So you're saying enforcement is
very, very important.
Is very
right?
weak.
Enforcement is very weak, yes, absolutely, right? But it's a function of not having, what you said, not having proper regulation, right? And bringing everybody within the fold for the collective. Mm-hmm. Go back to the political setup, right? US and China are competing for AI, Now,
Yeah.
if you think about it, and I think I was listening to Eric Schmidt, the ex-Google CEO.
Yeah. He's written a very good book about AI.
Yes, exactly. So one of the things he was saying is that, look, when the cycle goes, when the innovation cycle kind of the curve goes from here to here, if you are not here, you can never catch up, right? So whoever kind of steepens the curve, be it China or the US, the other party will not catch up, and it makes sense because it's compounded growth on innovation, right? And geometric growth on innovation. So when that happens, it has significant geopolitical, national security, all kinds of consequences.
Of course.
Right? If my quantum models can, and my AI, my 1,000 AI agents can overwhelm your 100 AI agents because I'm sophisticated, you're completely compromised, right? So at the government level, that's why you see all the investments in AI, data centers, and so on and so forth, right? But bringing this down to the more sort of specific virtual assets and what's happening in the UAE, I think it's very important because what's happening in Abu Dhabi in terms of the investments in AI and data centers and so on and so forth, right? So you need compute power, basically. Quantum is the next thing, has to be, and quantum security is also a very important thing because there's always going to be a lag between people who have the money, get onto quantum, and God forbid some bad actors, right? They can really influence people who don't have quantum and they can just get destroyed because there's it's a car and a horse situation, right? These bad guys get the car and they can basically steal everything, and by the time you get on your horse, they're gone and you can never catch them. So this is what the UAE is trying to regulate also, if guidance.
So the book was called The Age of AI. As I was looking for it right now. It's by Eric Schmidt and Henry Kissinger.
Okay.
And it was written a few years ago, but when AI became not even a talking point, and it goes back 20, 30 years about how like AI was used to play. Do you remember? Are you into chess at all? Like Garry Kasparov?
Yeah.
So he I can't remember the name of the supercomputer that he was playing against.
Watson, I think it was Watson.
Is it Watson or Blue something?
Or, I don't know. I think it was IBM. I know it was an IBM one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And how that has actually, AI almost died in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's only been coming back to life with OpenAI. Obviously, OpenAI transformed all of this stuff.
Yeah.
They do say that deep fakes were around 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And they were used by, whatever. But we won't go down the conspiracy route. But interestingly now with AI, regulation, I think, is very important because the way it's used, the ethical decisions.
Yeah.
But practically speaking, here in the UAE, I think the DIFC now has its own AI sort of like ecosystem hub. Right?
Yeah, so DIFC, basically the main issue around AI, particularly is around data, right? Data protection, whose data is used for what purposes, so on and so forth. So DIFC definitely have that in place. There's some guidance consultation papers out as well. And this is across the UAE, and there's obviously AI minister in the UAE who is basically publishing the various sort of consultative papers and discussions and so on. So there's progress being made. But just going back to the analogy of AI. So think of basically, would you ever go to a hospital that doesn't have a regulator?
Hell no.
So AI basically has the same criticality, right?
Yeah.
It's fundamentally will play a role that hospitals will play in keeping you alive and healthy and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
It can really socially, politically, just think about it.
But it's a very nascent form of regulation.
It will develop, right? It will develop.
Yeah.
Now, what needs to happen, your point is 100% correct. It needs to develop much faster. So the same protocols of creating regulation and approving regulation and implementing regulation and enforcement, which takes quite a long time, won't really, the pace with which AI is developing, I think the regulatory pace has to increase in order for it to effectively manage. It will never manage, regulations are always reactive, right?
Yeah.
Industry always comes forward. Somebody, in very simple math also, an AI engineer is getting paid $1 million. A regulator is getting paid $150,000, right? Go figure. You multiply that to 1,000 times.
Yeah.
The guys who are getting paid $1 million are generally going to be significantly ahead with guys who are getting paid $150,000. Not that there's an intelligence gap, but it's simply it's a resource gap. It's a resource gap, right? So once you provide resources to smart people, regulators are very smart, but they don't have the same kind of resources because it's not a private enterprise, it's a public enterprise. There obviously the gap becomes more and more, right? That's why do you have issues? Do you have issues in financial services, the 2008 crisis, whatever, 87, whatever have you, is because regulations don't catch up to what's happening in the industry.
Yeah.
And it's all reactive. So if you had data, I'm sure everybody has seen The Big Short, right?
Of course.
Right.
Great
so
film.
if you have data, imagine if the regulators had data of what the hedge fund manager had.
Yeah, they would. But yeah, again, we're talking about US regulators.
Yeah.
And Western world regulators,
and the US.
But even with the data they had, they wouldn't have been able to do anything because they are not as nimble, and the enforcement is very weak.
Correct. But I mean, US regulators is regulation by enforcement, right? It's not. UK regulator is principle based. US generally regulates through enforcement. Yeah. They hammer you, and then basically everybody gets in line. So that's what they were doing with the virtual assets. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
but the Genius Act is very interesting. What do you make of that?
I think it's.
Is it genius?
I think it's considering where the U.S. was, if you ask me, 2 years ago, it definitely is genius. Because the avenues it is opening in terms of what the expectation is from the government and from Congress and everything else, and how the regulations need to be put in, and regulating securities. Because the moment the U.S. markets actively start embracing virtual assets, which is obviously is happening now with the ETFs and derivative instruments that are listed and so on and so forth. It will change the game. And the flow that used to remain off the US is going to go to the US. Now, the big question is, how would that play out for the region?
Yeah.
Right? Now, I was in Saudi a couple of weeks ago or last week. And one of the discussions I was having with somebody very senior in Saudi is that because of a bit of a liquidity sort of move, things are moving to the U.S., because the returns are better in the U.S. now than they are in Saudi. So Saudi investors are choosing, and Tadawul volume, if you just look at it, a year ago they were at a certain level, now they're down for whatever reason. So this can happen to other places as well. Now, but U.S. is also very up and down, right?
It is.
So you have to play that. You have to play that game with a lot of caution. If you're just trading, then maybe that's a good strategy. If it's a strategic thing, then you really have to think about the value add. My view is it's very hard to bet against the U.S. at least for the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
But then
the Genius Act. The Genius Act was, I think, very. It's an act of genius in a way because it cements the U.S. dollar to be the currency for virtual assets.
Yeah.
Virtual assets are everywhere, from payments to how cars work, whatever, right?
Correct.
It's the way
no CBDC.
CBDC. And that's why I think the Genius Act was almost created, because Trump has been very vocal as a libertarian, or so-called libertarian, the whole MAGA movement, right? Say what you want of them, but very against the whole aspect of a CBDC, because then a pure cashless society takes away the freedom of the individual.
Absolutely.
And that, I think, works very well. But also, it's a war. I think it's a sort of larger. It helps sort of cement it against, say, Chinese innovation in virtual assets.
Yeah.
Chinese already have a CBDC.
Yeah, correct.
But I think that's why I think it's a very, very. I think it's good for the US.
Yeah, and not harp on the same point, but again, you look at what I said earlier, which is about the politics, right? The structural setup in China is very different.
Yeah.
From the structural setup in the US.
Absolutely.
A CBDC in China will probably work, and you won't get you will get pushback for sure, but that pushback can be managed.
Yeah.
Imagine a CBDC in the US where Uncle Sam can see how many cigarettes you buy and how many soaps you can buy, because it's digital, right? I can see everything if I want to, and there's a backdoor and so on. So that would never work.
Yeah.
That's why the Americans have the right to carry weapons, because the whole purpose of that was to make sure that if the government misbehaves, you have ammunition to challenge any misstep from the government, and that was the main reason for it, right? So now obviously it's taken a different form altogether, but the fundamental issues there is the same thing. Politics drives policy, and policy drives regulation. So coming back to the tech piece, I think, look, the winners are going to be people who have real good ideas in relation to AI, and how AI can help. I think at this point in time, AI is streamlining processes. I'll give you a simple example of what we're doing. So we have an AI agent that will be launched on Azaka, which is going to be similar to what your OpenAI bar is when you go to OpenAI or Google, and you ask it a question, and it will provide you the answer.
Right.
So for example, if there's a regulatory audit now, and they ask you for all the information for the last year, and in a certain format, that typically for a medium enterprise will take weeks, if not months, to produce. For a large institution, very, very long time. Right. Or they throw a lot of people at it. With this AI agent, if the data is clean, which is very important, all you have to do is type, saying, I would like you to create a report with these fields and with this information, and because it's all connected.
And uses LLMs, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Uses LLMs and saying, okay, connect to the CRM system, connect to the financial system, and it's already connected, and get me this information, right? And it will give you the report. And then you can validate that, right? But a month of, let's say, 2 people's time can be cut down to a day or 2, or 3. And I'll tell you the story about this. In 2018, we started as a company, started getting a lot of requests for automation. This is not working from clients, or they have this problem. We don't have a tool. We don't have this. Existing tools don't work. They're very clunky, blah, blah, blah. So we said, okay, well, there's a clear opportunity hitting us in the face, that we can build technology to execute for our clients what they want. So that's basically how.
Because compliance has moved on from people filling out forms.
Correct.
To doing it online.
Correct. Exactly. And then it's all about gathering data, analysis, and production of output that either is valuable for you or valuable for the regulator, right? It's very simple. It's not that complicated. How you do it can be very complicated, because it's very easy when you're doing a manual process, because you're a human being. You can make immediate decisions on what to do. But if you're building a system, it's nearly impossible, at least now without AI, to build for every single permutation or combination, because everything can have hundreds and thousands of different ways you can do this, right? If I say yes, would that lead to a yes, and then that can lead to a no, and that can completely create. So there are very few closed loop flows. Right? A lot of the loops are open, which is very, very complicated.
What problem does Azaka solve?
So Azaka is solving basically one thing. So we have 3 products, very simply. So how do you onboard your customer? How do you manage the compliance for your customer? So that's a corporate compliance. We have a first element is the KYC and KYB part. Just to give you a simple example, if you onboard a corporate entity, if you go to a bank, a normal bank here will take 6 months to 12 months to onboard a corporate entity. Maybe when you go to an asset manager, it'll be a little less, maybe weeks or something like that. With Azaka, because of the way we have set it up, it can be a day or less than a day, or can be half a day, depending on what information is provided, right? And if you think about the commercial value of this, generally, the reason why I'm opening an account is because I want to do a trade. Or if I want to do 4 trades. So if you do 4 trades in a year, and you haven't opened an account for, let's say, 6 months, you lost on 2 trades and all that revenue, right?
Of course.
Plus
it's an efficiency play.
It's an
Massive
efficiency play.
and
It's also a
revolution
revenue.
in-
It's a revenue play, right? So our tagline is empowering compliance. Compliance that empowers the business, empowers the stakeholders.
Yeah.
Right. The idea is for people to do business quickly but correctly.
Yeah.
Right, and have the ability to kind of see what they're doing. So going back to my earlier point, which is data and your ability to get data and analyze and make informed decisions, right? Because I can guarantee you, if I go anywhere in any institution here, if I go to the C-level, I'm saying, are you comfortable that you have all the data that you need?
Yeah.
There's only one answer you're going to get.
Please provide your audited financial statements in paper form stamped on each page.
Yes. So stuff like that, right? So we're trying to get away. So KYC, KYB, which is the first part of the journey. How do I quickly get customers on board with least amount of friction? How do we manage them once I've gotten them on board? Because all of us are very annoyed when we get emails saying your account is going to be blocked because you haven't uploaded the passport. You upload the passport, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Sometimes all that stuff, right? So it's very irritating. And then the conduct of business part, which is what we call corporate compliance, is what the institution has to comply with their regulation. So your marketing compliance, your insider trading compliance, your internal reporting, et cetera. And then we have transaction monitoring, which basically monitors transaction in real time, right? So it keeps you compliant.
So
as
compliance,
you go along.
AML, that sort of thing.
Yeah, AML and market surveillance as well.
Market
So insider trading,
surveillance.
that kind of thing, right?
So
So you have a
CDT.
full package that goes from when you onboard the customer,
Yeah.
when you monitor their transaction, and then you manage your interaction with the regulator because you have all the data that you need and all the requirements that you have that you need to comply with built into a single system. And what it does is that it has a multi-tenancy model. So effectively what it does is if you are a JP Morgan and then you have 50 countries and 500 different businesses, it's all on a single platform.
Great.
And it connects with everything.
So this next bit, last bit, is very, very quick.
Yep.
No more than 2 sentences.
Okay.
I try to give you a guidance. No more
Okay.
than 2 sentences.
Okay, wow.
So quick fire.
Okay.
Quick fire round.
Okay, sure.
4 questions.
Okay.
First question. What's next for Jehanzeb?
Ooh, global domination and compliance.
What's next for Azakal or Awan?
The number one GRC and technology firm in the region.
GRC, you explained it before.
Yeah, Awan Partners, governance, risk and compliance and regulatory finance consulting firm, and the technology firm, RegTech technology firm in the MENA region.
What's next for the industry?
Ooh, lots of turmoil, but not for those people who get their data sorted.
Interesting. Cryptic.
If you have control of your data, you have control of your destiny.
Right. This is the final question, the hardest one. What's next for humanity?
I'm an eternal optimist. We will figure it out and always see the best in the person, even though you may be experiencing the worst with them.
Interesting.
It's all about perspective.
Fantastic. We've just finished right on time. So
Thank you for having me.
thank you very much for coming on board today. And this has been The Next. This is, we've had Jehanzeb Awan from Awan and Partners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ahmed. It's a pleasure being here.